Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new series for Prison Architect. I've been working on these in the past. I've done a couple of different streams for it. A few different prisons in the past, but the thing is with the past prisons is one of the features in this game is you can essentially sell off your prison and use your money towards your next prison, which gives you a nice little bit of a head start. But it kind of felt like I was cheating a little bit because it gave me a huge amount of money at the start for new prisons. So what I decided to do is create a brand new prison. Start from the very beginning. We'll start again. And my objective here at the moment is I'm going to start again, as I say. But I think I'd like to design a prison that at the end of it, or when I'm happy with it. The thing is with this game is there's no real kind of end game, so to speak. You just keep playing until you want to stop. So, you set your own objectives. You decide what you want to do. So I'm going to try and create a prison that is able, that I'm going to try and escape from at the end of it. So one of the other modes in this game is you can escape your own prison, or you can play an inmate for your prison. So you can kind of, learn to feel what it's like to actually live in your own prison. So I'm going to kind of make a weird little... I'm going to give this a go and try and design a prison in such a way that is unescapable for normal particular prisoners, but has a particular way out. So if the conditions fall rightly, that there is a way out. So I need to try and figure out a way that I'm going to design a prison that suits that need. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge. I don't know what it quite means at this point, but that's my objective. So as I say, brand new prison. So you have the choice between a male or a female prison. I've always done male in the past, so I'm just going to continue with male. I don't think there's actually really any difference other than literally the appearance of your inmates. So I'm going to leave it as a male. Now, the bog standard warden is this person here, just called the warden. The most balanced individual on the planet. He does his job and nothing else. People just call him the warden. The lobbyist has friends in high places and makes sure the more easily controlled prisoners end up coming his way. Halves the likelihood of receiving prisoners who are violent, lethal, volatile, deadly, or fighters. Rita, ruthless and terrifying. Rita has a reputation for running her facilities through judicial application of fear. Rumours of her carrying a whip may be exaggerated. Halves the likelihood of prisoners being stoical or fearless. Prisoners are suppressed twice as quickly. J.W. Periwinkle. Got a military background by the looks of it. Warden Periwinkle says he was a sapper in the war. He never says which war specifically, but he certainly knows everything about digging tunnels. Guard dogs have a 50% chance of fully uncovering any tunnels they detect. The pacifier. I love the fact he's got glasses as well. The pacifier has an unusual talent for being able to calm even the most violent individuals. Even being in the same room as him is enough to make people docile and compliant. Reduces the overall temperature of your prison, making your inmates less likely to cause trouble. And lastly, Safara Akanova? I'm going to take a guess at that one. Safara Akanova has a spotless reputation as a squeaky clean record, but behind the scenes, shady deals and under-the-table offerings are nothing uncommon for her. Gets a small cut of the resale value of each piece of contraband found. Prisoners found with contraband will be fined directly from their savings. Now, I've always gone for the bog standard warden, but I fancy doing something a little bit different here. Let's go with the pacifier. As for the mode, I'm going to go with a nice medium prison, nice in the middle. Fog of war, I don't like having fog of war, I'm just going to turn it off. Generate forest, yeah. Generate lakes, meh, no. Generate buildings, I'll turn it on. At the end of the day, I can just remove things if they're in the way. Lakes, yeah, okay, I could turn them on and I could just build around them, but they're just a hazard I prefer not to have. Failure conditions, I like to put failure conditions in, even though, like I said, there's no real win conditions, but having failure conditions mean that there is a way to lose, so at least, if there's too many escapes, if there's too many deaths, then the game will fail and you'll have to start again. It's a hard way of learning it, but it's the reality of learning it. Gangs, there's no... Gangs are like an extra level of difficulty. I'm not going to put them on for now. It's the same with events, whether... All the rest of here are just kind of options to make it more difficult or more easy. This kind of balance at the moment is kind of nice in the middle. It's not too hard, it's not too easy, so it's going to provide a nice challenge for me, which again is kind of where I want it to go with the difficulty that I'm setting myself of trying to escape my own prison. Now, I play this game with relatively no mods. I'm just going to pause it here. Now, we can see we've got a couple of buildings already here. Not going to be causing major issues. We've got a few trees on the edge here. And we've got our first load of workers due to arrive. Now, as I say, I will just show you extras, mods. I use 2 mods. So, for what you're going to see in the game, it's not really going to affect anything at all. The CCTV cameras are coming to later. You probably won't see them in this episode. But basically, when you're setting up CCTVs, it's very difficult to look at the icons and tell which direction your cameras are pointing. So that just adds the arrows for CCTVs. And clearer needs icons just makes it a little bit clearer as to what your inmates actually need. Actually, at the moment, neither of these are enabled. They're both turned off, but I may turn them on in later episodes just in case you start to see a change of icons or camera angles. We'll ignore the rest of the extras for now, and we'll leave that for now. So, this is Prison Architect. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my general day-to-day job is actually a structural engineer. While this may not be fully applicable to a game like this, it does mean that I get to see a lot of architectural drawings pretty much almost every day. Now, how this applies to Prison Architect? It does and it doesn't. So, I know I've played this game, so I have a limited degree of previous experience. I know what the inmates need, and I know the basic principles of the way to lay things out. Now, with that in mind, I also need to try, as I say, to plan a prison that I can escape from. Now, how and what point I'm going to do this, I'm going to try and set the limit of... I'm going to expand my prison till I get to 100 prisoners, and when I get to 100 prisoners, I want the prison to be in a position then that I can escape from it. Now, prison intake. So this is day 1. As you can see up here, you can see the clock, and it starts at 8 o'clock every day, and it starts with a routine of shower. Now, regime comes later. In fact, I can immediately hire a warden, so I can just see this. So, regime is the routine that my inmates will follow every day. At 8 o'clock, they can see they shower. 9 o'clock, they lock up. 10 o'clock, free time, so on and so forth. So it will just give you a short abbreviation of what's going on at this particular time every day. I'll go into it more later on when it becomes a little bit more pressing. In pause mode, you can plan your prison if you want. So you can, for example, set that is an area that you want to work in. And you can plan your layouts. So you can do a lot while on pause. Now, pause is quite important at the start of the game, that you want to do it as quickly as possible. As you can see up here, this is your to-do list. So, my to-do list at the moment is to read the CEO's letter, accept my first grant, and accept my first set of prisoners. Now, as you can see up here, I've got a bank balance, how much I'm starting with. So, as I said, it's a brand new game. I start with a nominal fee of 30,000, we'll call them dollars. And this shows your daily cash flow. So, at the end of the day, a prison you have to run like a business. The idea is that you receive money for inmates, you spend money on reforming those inmates, paying your guards, so on and so forth. So you have to run it in a positive manner. You have to have it so that it's generating a income. There may be points where your money drops down. If an inmate escapes or an inmate dies, then it will incur a fine, so your money will go down. But on the flip side, for things like removing trees, you'll generate a small amount of lumber, and in turn you can actually sell that lumber and make a bit of money. Now, basic things to do on start. So, you're building, these are your workmen. Your workmen will arrive, or they'll be arriving shortly on this first truck, and they are the ones that do all the legwork. Now, me as the player, I'm essentially figuring out the layout of everything. I'm figuring out where everything goes. It's your workmen that will do the actual building. You are limited with the amount of funds that you have at the start of the game, so in turn that also limits your ability to actually build your prison. Now, you are also limited with the amount of things you have available. As you can see here, there is a selection of rooms, and not every single room is available. You have to research it later on. Now, let's start off with the first on the to-do list. So, read the letter. Dear Sir, Madam, congratulations on completing your basic induction. You are now a fully qualified prison architect. Soon you'll be designing, building, and running your own prisons, starting from nothing but an empty plot of land and a few stacks of bricks. Before you get started, I thought I might share some important lessons with you. Point 1. Every prison needs a warden. He should be one of the first hires. Funny enough, I've just hired one. Build him a nice office and he'll open up a whole range of advanced facilities via the bureaucracy system. Number 2. Individual jail cells are expensive, especially early on when funds are very tight. Save money by starting with a single large holding cell, which can be shared between many prisoners at once. Point 3. Get your kitchen and canteen up and running before the first prisoners show up, and be sure to hire some cooks. Nothing irritates a prisoner more than an empty stomach. Point 4. Building a prison is an expensive undertaking, and you will need to become a master of raising large volumes of money through grants and contracts. You can access these grants through the report screen. That's about everything. Good luck. The CEO of the Prison Architects Corporation. Let's get rid of that. So accept your first grant, which I will be able to do later on. Bureaucracy, can I see it? Yes, I can. So, I now have a warden. Now, this is essentially your research screen. Everything on here gives you access to something new in your prison. As you can see, it all has costs associated with it. Generally, the legal tree is the most expensive, but then it saves you a lot of money and lots of difficulties later on. So it's something to look at once you have a kind of nice income of a nice flow of cash, but it isn't immediately required. Legal is great with dealing with death inmates. So just to explain that further, you have different types of prisoners. You have high risk, low risk, and normal risk. Well, actually, does it appear on here? Ah, this is the one. So, there's actually another category as well, which is death inmates, but it's minimum, medium, and max security. Now, each type of inmate has... They're more likely to be particularly riotous. They're more likely to cause a fight. They're more likely to be annoying. Let's go with that. The higher their security. So, it's simple in the sense that minimum security are the inmates that are occupying a space in your prison. They don't generate, as you can see, a huge amount of money. Max security guys generate the huge amounts of money, but in turn, they're also the ones that are more likely to cause riots in your prison. Minimum security are the complete opposite. They don't generate a huge amount of money, but they take up a space in your prison. And they're not likely to start any fights. They're the guys that are they just want to serve their time and they just want to get out. And medium security is the kind of guy in between. Now, what you want to generally try to do, if you can, when you're planning your layouts, there's not really much I can do when it's my first prison. But generally you want to try to avoid mixing max security with minimum or medium security guys. If there's a particular attribute in a minimum or a medium security guy, a max security guy can sometimes take... they can try and utilize that ability a little bit more. So they're more likely to... A max security guy is more likely to start a fight with a minimum or a medium security guy if they intermingle. You just want to try to avoid it if you can. So you try and segregate your prison as best you can. You can do that later on. I will explain that. So... starting inmates. At the moment, I have 6 medium security and 2 minimum security people available. So I'm going to be mixing my security for my prison between medium and minimum security. I don't really mind doing that. It's only really when the max security guys come in that it starts becoming a little bit more difficult. So I just need to kind of plan a prison that is going to have them intermingling. Now, one of the things it said there was generate a high capacity holding cell. The thing is, your prisoners, when they're close to each other, they don't like it. They like their own personal space. Later on, you see this tab here. Once you hire a psychologist, you can see the needs of your individual prisoners. And you can adjust the things in your prison to kind of bear that in mind. Let's actually go through the report system properly. So, in the bottom right-hand corner, we have the report screen. It gives you a book which has a series of tabs in it. It's just a way of abbreviating all the information you're going to be given. So your staff, for example, will show you your workers, your guards, your administrators. Excuse me. It will show you your workers, your guards, and your staff, and your general administrators. So your administrators are essentially people that never really interact with the prisoners. They're the ones that actually have an office on site, and from there they direct and they do their research. Through them, as you can see on the bureaucracy screen, for example, if I was to then later hire an admin staff who's works in finance, they'll sit in their office and they will be able to then invest in me having land expansion, an extra grant, bank loans, tax relief, and offshore tax haven, for example. So they're the people that don't really generally interact with your prisoners. Staff are people that will interact with your prisoners, and they'll just be wandering around, whereas your guards are, of course, the people that are providing overwatch to the rest of your prison. Your workers are the ones that are doing your building. You generally have a large quantity of them at the start, and then as time goes on, when you don't need them so much, you generally will end up firing a few of them off. Of course, you have to pay them wages, so obviously having a warden, as you can see at the start, I had 30,000, now I'm at 29,000. So of course, I've hired a warden and it's cost me money. Hiring people costs them money, and you obviously have to pay them wages. Let's see, finance. Yeah, so later on when the finance screen becomes available, you'll be able to see that breakdown. Once I get an account, I will share that with you guys. Prisoners, again, I'll come into it once prisoners start arriving. Intake. So the intake screen is basically telling the system how many prisoners you want to take. So at the moment, in 23 hours and 55 minutes, I have a total of 8 inmates arriving. I have 6 of medium security and I have 2 of minimum security. I can choose to close my prison, so therefore in the next 23 hours, the next 24 hours essentially, no prisoners will arrive, and then the following day I can then open it if I want. Now, while there's nothing bad about not opening a prison, at the end of the day, the point of playing is that you have to generate enough money to keep going. So you obviously want to have the prisoners arriving because they are giving you money. So it's just finding a nice balance between finding enough people that you can carefully look after them and generate money, whilst avoiding them escaping and incurring fines. So this screen is just giving you the facility to control it. You can control the ratio later on. Again, it's not quite important now. So for example, say I have 50 available of each, I can adjust the ratio so that say I want to tell the system that I want to take 10 prisoners, it will change the ratio so that, say, 8 of those prisoners are max security, 1 might be medium and 1 might be minimum. It gives you the option there so that if you need the extra money for the higher security guys, you can get the money from, basically. You can tell the system to fill it to capacity. So at the moment I have a capacity of 0 because I haven't actually built anything. But later on I could just leave that on so that whenever I make space, prisoners will start arriving, and whenever I don't have space, they won't arrive. I can set a total prisoners number, so if I want to say have 100 arrive, I can have 100 arrive. At the moment there is only 8 available, so no matter how high I set this number, it will only give me 8. I can also set a number per day, so I can set myself an own goal of, say, I want to keep designing this prison and every day I want to increase it by 10. That's not really a realistic target because I'd have this done in 10 days, which is just not happening, but it gives you a self-imposed goal. Something just as simple as maybe 1 prisoner a day is a nice number to start with, but each to their own. Everyone can decide how many they want to do. And of course, the all available will literally just keep sending as many prisoners that become available in the system. They will just keep firing them at you. Next screen is jobs. Again, we have no prisoners, so we can't really use that screen at the moment. We'll come back to that later. Needs, we'll come back to it later. Regime. So the regime is basically the calendar of your daily routine, or the daily regime, funny enough, of all your prisoners. So at the moment, they go to bed at 11 p.m. and they wake up at 7 a.m. where they remain in their cells for lockup from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. And then if I have a shower block, which I'll go into later, they'll then leave their cell and go to the shower block from 8 a.m. till 9 a.m. and then they'll return back to their cell for lockup. 10 a.m. free time, so they will be released from their cells and they'll be able to do whatever they like, whether it be work, whether it be hang out in the yard, whether it be make personal phone calls. They can do whatever they like. They then return to lockup. They then have something to eat from midday, so from 1 o'clock till 3 o'clock they'll have something to eat. Then they go and exercise in the yard, back to lockup, back to free time, back to lockup again. Then they'll have an evening meal. So they only eat twice a day at the moment, which is enough for most of your prisoners. You don't have to get them to have 3 square meals. The moment they kind of rate showering as a little bit more important than eating. They can wait for their eating, but they must have that morning shower. Apparently is a thing. And then lock up and sleep again. Now, as you can see, it says work/free time. So later on, when the job screen tab becomes a little bit more available, you can give your inmates something to do. They don't always like just sitting there and doing nothing. It doesn't do anything for their mood. And you can get them to actually work for you, and it's just an alternative way of generating money. It gives them skills, it gives them learning abilities, it gives them something to do, and in turn it actually gives you money. So it's a useful thing to do, which we can look at later on. Grants. Grants are the way of generating your money. So part of the objective here is accepting your first grant. So as you can see here, there's a few different options, plus there's 7 more hidden. Now, generally, the way this works is once you do one thing, you unlock a next thing. Once you do that thing, it unlocks the next thing, so on and so forth. So you just constantly keep expanding. But the way the grants work is it's just a great way to generate money for you. Now, you have a limited number of grants that you can take at the beginning. So as you can see here, it says you can accept no more than 2 grants at a time. Use your accountant to raise this limit. Now, my objective here is to build a basic detention center, so build my first prison. As you can see here, it tells you I'll get $20,000 up front with a $10,000 completion bonus. Turn an empty field into a functioning prison. This is government contract, gives you the funds necessary to build an absolute minimum facilities for your first set of prisoners. Build a holding cell, build a shower, build a yard, build a kitchen, build a canteen, hire at least 2 guards and 2 cooks. So that gives me my first set of goals. So I'm going to accept that right now. So there we go. The grant is active. I've been getting $20,000. It shows up as here in progress. And then it gives me a list of to do on the left. Now I could take 2. So I can look at these other options and see what suits me best. So build 2 officers, hire a warden, use the finance to finance through bureaucracy, and hire an accountant. That's going to be a good second one to take, but at the moment it only gives me 5,000 up front and a 5,000 completion bonus. Inmate health and well-being, build a medical ward, hire at least 2 doctors, hire a psychologist, which also requires an office, or staff well-being, which gives me 10,000 only when I complete it. So prisoner worker unions have been receiving reports of staff being overstressed and overworked. I find that difficult to believe given that I've just started, but hey, to the point that mistakes are being made. Make sure similar issues do not occur in your facility. Build a staff room, have at least 5 guards without assigned duties, ensure none of your staff are exhausted. Now, realistically, inmate at health and well-being gives me 10,000 up front. I should probably take that, given that I will make a medical ward and have at least 2 doctors probably by the time the prison's open. But I think the administration centre is going to be the better option for me, because I've already hired the warden. I'm going to build the offices for other personnel, for the accountant anyway, so it's just money that I'm going to be generating when I'm just doing my basic layout. So I have my first 2 goals that I have set myself, which comes in the grants tab. Last of all, programs. Now, programs are figured out through research, and if you have particular rooms in your prison, or if you have particular personnel. So it's again just a way for your prisoners to have something to do. Some of them might, be reformed. At the end of the day, your ultimate goal of working at this prison is to release them and to be reformed. And having some of these programs being used and being actually active in your prison may actually reform them. And that's what you want. So, you're given spiritual guidance is the first one at the very beginning. Now, spiritual guidance is probably the easiest one to unlock. Well, as you can see, it's given to you at the start. And to be fair, it's probably the one that is most used. So when I go to actually build the prison, you'll see that I'll build a fairly big chapel, because there is actually a lot of inmates that seek spiritual guidance. They seek the notion of a higher being, so that they know that everything they've done hasn't been a complete waste, basically. Anyway, I won't go into spiritual guidance. It's all religious. It's spiritual, literally. All I know is I need to build them. It shows multi-faiths as well, which I think is a really nice touch in this game. But yes, spiritual guidance is a nice program, which again we can do later on. It kind of... I don't know if I can actually do it. No, I need... So, yeah, when I figure out time slots, so when people can fit things in, I'll be able to actually fit it in. But for now, because I have nothing really set up and no prisoners arriving, I can't do anything. So, let's look at the land, shall we? So, we have basic dirt, we have a few trees, we have a couple of structures down here already. They're not the greatest, but it might provide us with a nice starting area to kind of help get the costs down. So, I might actually wall it off and set this as my first prison area. It's a nice kind of layout. I just need to kind of enclose it in a little bit better. So, having that as my first structure, and that maybe as an adjoining structure. So, I've just spent almost 5,000 already for my first set of structures. Right, so, I'm just doing things without saying. Foundations. First of all, make sure you've got automatic light placement turned on. It automatically just places lights around your prison. You need an electrical system put in place to allow those lights to be turned on, but it's just an easy way of illuminating your prison. It does cost you. Obviously, they have to build the lights, but it's a fairly minimal amount, and it's a pretty good distribution of light. You have two different options for your actual foundations. You have brick and concrete. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. Whatever you decide to build your prison out of, if you decide that you want to make it out of brick, it's fine. Or if you want to make it out of concrete, it's fine. It doesn't make any difference. There's no kind of decor value. They don't really care in the sense of how the actual walls look. Later on, you have the option of flooring, which they do kind of take into consideration, as well as movement speed is taken into consideration with the types of floor. So if you have, like, on here we have dirt, we have sand, we have grass. Depending on that type of actual flooring, they will move at different speeds. As you can see here, you have a kind of concrete type, pavement type material. They'll actually move faster on that. So what I might actually do here is just extend that out to here, out to the road, so that when my prisoners start arriving, they have an area that they actually walked, they're marched essentially to. So, foundations. Normally, if I don't have a structure here, what I would have done is just planned out the actual shape of the structure. So, you have walls. So you're planning to have down here, gives you an idea of, if I want it to be this big, then I'll set it as this big. It then gives me an idea that, okay, well, maybe I want the cell to be that shape. Okay, if I want that shape, then maybe I'll just keep going along. So if I keep repeating that, eventually I'll get to the end. Well, so here's the problem. Because of the shape and I've built the building, my last cell either has to be a really big cell, or I make it too small. Or, because I've now planned it and not actually built it, I just extend it out another tile, build the wall along here, and there we go. We have a group of cells all the same size, for example. We could then open up here, so this could essentially be the corridor through here, and then we could just repeat the process again on this side. Voila! So, there we go. Fish, fish, posh, posh. So, in the simplest sense, that is a cell block. It can hold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, okay, why have I just got rid of a wall? Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why am I doing it like that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, there we go. It's 2 lots of 8 cells. Simple. That is a basic layout for a cell. But I know that if I want to do that layout, I need it to be 25 tiles wide. And it needs to be 14 tiles big. So this down here is actually 18 tiles by 24 tiles. So at the moment I know, based on this structure, that I'm not going to get all these cells in here. I'm going to have to make the end cell shorter, like so. Which is actually going to reduce the capacity. Now, there's nothing wrong with having cells like this, but what it does mean is that these are normally for solitary. So you have one person in here for misbehaving. Or the other option of having... I don't know if it's immediately unlocked. I believe it is. Where am I looking? Dormitory. So it requires a cell that's 3 by 2. So what I could do here is just turn these end cells into dormitories if I want. Because I'm taking minimum and medium security, guys, I think what I'll do is I'll just make a series of small cells, and then this last cell, I'll just make it like this and turn it into a dormitory. So it's a bigger cell, but I'll just put bunk beds in. And that's simple. That deals with that problem. So I know it's this wide. So what I'll do along here is just figure out that that's that big. And if I want to, your other alternative is you do cells this way if I wanted to. Although that's a little bit on the long side. Let's cut that back a little bit. So does it work out a little bit better to run the cells this way? So yes, in reality, if I want to evenly space them, I could do them this way if I wanted to. It is 24 tiles wide, so let's just get rid of this. Let's make this 24 by 24. Like that. And extend these ones out. So I can do a set of cells there, and then if I wanted to, I could, in fact, I might do this. So what I'll end up doing here is I'll have an additional, there we go. So that is essentially what I'm going to turn this building into. It gives me a nice little layout so that, in fact, sorry, I'm just thinking about this. Let's get rid of that. Let's extend this down to this wall. And extend this up to this wall. close this in, close this in, and close this in, and we close this in. Let's go up to there. So this now means that my cells are this big. I've got 2 rooms. Brilliant. It also means that this little entrance down here I can leave open, and I can put something else in here if I want. Right, well, let's go into the room, shall we? So your foundations, that's just allowed me to plan out my actual foundations. So I know the size, based on this one, that this is the layout that I want to do. So any other time you can figure out the planning stage. You can figure out, you know, if you want to make a foundation of a tiny little area, so, you know, only that big, for example, only that big, for example, you'll be able to plan what you're going to put in there. So you can figure out if you want your foundations bigger or smaller. Yes, a degree of it is manageable by the amount of money you have. If you've got lots of money, you can make big foundations.